Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff Glad, Chief Medical Officer of FullScript, the leading healthcare platform for providers to prescribe healthcare's best supplements, drive better patient outcomes, and scale practice growth with unparalleled efficiency. As a healthcare provider, I know that finding time to stay up to date on the latest trends and research in modern medicine can be a daunting task. That's why I'm excited to share a cutting-edge supplement course our team of medical experts worked on in collaboration with A4M and several industry experts, designed to help you navigate supplements and make more informed clinical decisions. Throughout the 16 hours of content, we'll give you the clinical context you'll need to confidently recommend supplements to your patients. The A4M Supplement Certification course is the perfect starting point or clinical update for optimizing your supplement treatment plans to ensure the best possible outcomes for your patients. Go to www.a4m.com/supplement-certification-course.html and use the promo code podcast20 at checkout to get a 20% discount. Enroll today and elevate your whole person care.
Welcome to Redefining Medicine, an intimate and personalized program that illustrates a different side of the practice of medicine. Our in-depth conversations will focus on the physicians and practitioners who are redefining medicine through their integrative, functional, and holistic approach to health and well-being. Our host for Redefining Medicine is Dr. Erica Schwartz. For more than 20 years, Dr. Erica has been at the forefront of advanced patient care, taking the best from conventional and integrative medicine and applying them to prevent disease. Dr. Erica is a distinguished A4M faculty member in disciplines ranging from hormone therapy, peptide therapy, and IV nutritional support.
Hi, welcome to Redefining Medicine. Today we're interviewing Dr. Colleen Cutcliffe. She's the CEO, co-founder of Pendulum, and I'm so excited. I mean, you had standing room only in your lecture, and you're amazing. And by the way, I use Acromantia.
Oh, so I love it.
I
awesome.
didn't know that. So tell me about the idea of probiotics, gut health. How did you get here? How did you wind up on this path?
It's a great question. How do we ever end up where we are? I think it's a lot of things coming together and the things coming into play. So, I mean, my background is in biochemistry and molecular biology, and I actually started my career in pharmaceutical drugs. We were developing drugs for Parkinson's disease, and then I joined a startup company doing DNA sequencing, and that company went through rapid growth. It went public, and it was a super exciting time to be building something that then went public. And on the other side of that, I started this company, and the whole idea was that probiotics and yogurts have been on the shelves forever. But they're all, if you start reading labels, they're all about lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. And what DNA sequencing technology enabled us to do was to really survey the gut microbiome and create a real science around it and start to understand, well, what are some of the other strains and what are they doing and what are some of the functions of the microbiome, and get outside of just I'm doing this just for general health, or I'm doing this just for GI distress, and start to look at some of the other axes, like the gut metabolism axis, the gut-brain axis. And so that's what got me super interested in the space. And then at the same time, my daughter, I realized she was a preemie. She was in the ICN when she was first born, and she was on a lot of antibiotics at that time. And there was a publication that came out by Marty Blazer, which showed that children, babies who were on a lot of antibiotics, were more prone to things like food allergies, diabetes, obesity, allergies, asthma later on in life. And so I thought, oh my gosh, this has happened to my kid. She had all those early antibiotics. I got to figure out how to reconstitute her microbiome. So then it became a no-brainer to at least try starting a company.
Sounds amazing. So when did you start Pendulum?
About 10 years ago. We spent approximately the first 8 years really as an R&D organization identifying these strains, figuring out what do they do in the lab, running preclinical trials, clinical trials, and then we brought our first product to market about a little over 2 years ago.
And that product was?
And that product is Pendulum Glucose Control, and it is shown to lower A1C and blood glucose spikes in people with type 2 diabetes. And so we ran a placebo-controlled, double-blinded, randomized trial that was published in BMJ that showed that with people who have diabetes who are already on metformin, when they went to our probiotic, compared to placebo, their A1C went down by 0.6 points.
That's significant.
Yes, and their blood glucose spikes down by 33%.
Amazing.
It's one of those things where you start a clinical trial and then you just pray every night and cross your fingers and your toes and your hair. But it's really exciting to see that the microbiome really can change metabolic health.
It's amazing, and it's like a really important time because we're seeing so many changes. So tell me about the GLP-1 part of it.
So when we started looking at metabolic syndrome, one of the things that we were really interested in is actually targeting GLP-1. Mm-hmm. This was 10 years ago, so this is before all of the craze of today came around. And actually our chief medical officer, who's been with us since the beginning, he was the CMO at Elan Pharmaceuticals. They brought the first GLP-1 drugs to the market, and they were they were acquired by BMS for like $7 billion. He retired, and then I came to him and I said, hey, do you know that GLP-1 is actually made by the gut microbiome? And I think we have a natural way to increase GLP-1. Sure. And he came out of retirement and came and worked with us. And so it's been just amazing to try to understand and unlock how does our body naturally increase GLP-1 and to identify these strains that can actually do that.
So tell us about it. Tell us about Akkermansia.
Sure. So just to maybe take 1 second to dive into how does GLP-1 work naturally.
By all means.
When we eat foods that are high in fibers and sugars and things like that, our microbiome metabolizes those foods. And one of the things that happens as a consequence of that metabolism is the production of short-chain fatty acids, including butyrate. And so we all know butyrate is a really important small molecule for colonic cells, also a really important small molecule because it stimulates L cells to produce GLP-1. And so what we found is that this formulation of strains, which are able to metabolize food into butyrate and stimulate GLP-1 production, are really important. And then there is Akkermansia muciniphila, which is kind of the queen of the show. Akkermansia is a really unique strain in that it has two important functions. One is that it's able to stimulate GLP-1. It has surface proteins, and it even secretes proteins, and all of those things actually stimulate GLP-1 production. And then the second thing it does is it's the only strain that we know of that actually lives at your mucin layer, consumes mucin, and rebuilds it. And so the mucin layer is the part that's basically the glue of your gut lining that holds all of your cells together and makes sure that you have tight junctions and a strong gut lining. And so without Akkermansia, you actually have a really thin glue, really thin mucin layer, and Akkermansia, and that can lead to things like the cells are actually not held together very well, what a lot of people call leaky gut, where all the things in the microbiome are now leaking out into the bloodstream. You get heightened inflammation, undesired immune responses. And so what Akkermansia does is it makes sure all day and all night that that glue is strong and that the gut lining is strong. And so in that way, Akkermansia not only stimulates GLP-1, but also makes sure that the gut lining is strong and helps to play a role in a lot of other health issues besides just metabolic syndrome.
So tell us about the other issues.
Well, one of the things that's interesting about Akkermansia, if you look at publications, if you look on PubMed, is that there are an exponentially growing number of publications around it. And then when you deep dive and you say, well, what are people studying around it? You'll see it's on a whole bunch of different disease states. And so what people have found is this really interesting correlation, which is that if you have type 2 diabetes, if you have obesity, if you have inflammatory bowel disease, if you have irritable bowel syndrome, even some neurodegenerative diseases like autism and Parkinson's disease, you're low in Akkermansia. And that's why it's become this really interesting kind of keystone strain, because how can it be that if you're low in this strain, it's associated with all of these different disease states. And I think it really boils down to that gut lining role. And it also really boils down to the fact that our ability to metabolize sugar is at the heart of a lot of these other diseases. And so all of these, we like to think of diseases as cleanly being disease 1, disease 2, disease 3, but they're actually all tied in with each other. And so if you can start to solve some of these fundamental issues, like your gut lining and your metabolism of sugar and your production of GLP-1, you actually see a much more global positive impact. And then conversely, when you don't have those fundamental things in place, you start to be susceptible to all these other diseases.
Right. So akromansia sounds very promising. What else do you have? What else do you have?
What have you done for me lately?
What's going on? Yes.
Well, there are 2 strains which have ever been published to show that they can help stimulate GLP-1. One is Akkermansia muciniphila, and the other is Clostridium butyricum. And so we have actually both of those strains in our formulation. I think that if you look at the other strains that are in there that are helping with the fermentation of fiber, they're all novel. So it's Akkermansia muciniphila, Clostridium butyricum, Clostridium beigeringii, and Anaerobutyricum halai. And these are all strains that you can't really find anywhere else,
Right.
but they're playing such an important role in our metabolism.
So why doesn't anybody know that?
Again,
Until you. Until Pendulum.
I would say a lot of academics have been studying the microbiome
Right.
for a long time, but I think that, again, because DNA sequencing technology only enabled microbiome to become a science, in the early 2000s. If you look before 2010, there's almost no publications on the microbiome. And so this is a relatively new field of study. And so I think that it's just, it takes a second to find stuff. And we were one of the first companies. I remember the first microbiome conference I ever went to. You could count on one hand how many companies were there, and we were one of them. And so I think it's been we've kind of been in the early stages of this, but it's been a ton of research around the world. And I'm super excited for the future and all of the new products that are going to come out, not just from us, but from our colleagues as well.
Of course. I think it's amazing. I think that, we've been working with probiotics. I'm a clinician, so we've been working with probiotics for decades, literally. And then when the whole microbiome conversation started, they were talking about the leaky gut, and nobody could figure out what that was about, and it was about the tight junctions that didn't really exist. And then the next level was butyrate, giving people butyrate to help with the maintenance of the junction. And then all of a sudden, there you come in, and you start talking about GLP-1 and what's really happening, and even learning that hormones are being made in the gut and everything. I mean, I've been working with hormones for 25 years. So it's amazing to see that it's all in the gut.
It is amazing, and I think we're not working in this, but you probably know too, people are starting to discover there are microbes that can help increase your circulating estrogen.
Yeah.
And so I think there's just a whole new world of opportunity around the relationship between the microbiome and hormones. And I'm curious, do you use gut testing in your practice? I get asked this all the time, so now I always like to ask practitioners back.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But also depends who does the gut testing.
Yes.
Who does the gut testing and what are you looking for? Because, one thing that happens is that, the leaky gut thing that I've always had a problem with because I never thought that we really understood what it meant. And now it's pretty clear. The leaky gut was like such a big diagnosis with, IBS and all of these big label diagnoses, which actually take away from fixing people. Because the moment somebody walks around and says, oh, I have IBS or I have leaky gut, it's like an excuse to not really go any further. And what we always did was we went further. We went further into the diet, movement, sleep, hormones. And I think that what's happening is the natural progression of things, and we're moving in the right direction, and you are doing an amazing job.
Thank you so much. And I think that it's still a super complicated problem that you guys are trying to solve. We're just giving one tool in this toolbox, and so
which is great.
It's amazing what you're able to do with this tool. And I think it's so important to think about the pairing of nutrition with the microbiome. I mean, those two things are tight at the hip. I always say it's like if you have a car with a shitty engine and you put the top fuel in it, you don't really go anywhere any faster.
No.
But if you can get the great engine, which is the microbiome, and put the great fuel in, which is nutrition, now you've got a high-performing vehicle.
You're right. And you know what's really amazing? That for decades, no one understood, and especially in the conventional classical medicine that I am trained in, that, and especially GI people, that you're talking to them and you're saying, ask them about the patient's diet.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we'll just give them some medication. And it's like, no, it's in the diet. And when you start bringing in probiotics that actually work, that are novel probiotics, when you start bringing in hormones, when you start bringing in peptides, all of a sudden you see that the diet is really pretty much everything you're putting in there.
That's right. That's everything you're putting in there. And one of the most amazing things is that the therapies for IBS are actually antibiotics. They are killing the microbiome.
The worst. The worst. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, your story is so remarkable with your daughter about giving the babies the antibiotics and then not realizing what's going to happen down the line.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, my co-founder had a baby about 5 years after we'd started this company, who was also a preemie, and he had to sign all these forms to say, don't give my preemie antibiotics.
Sure.
And so
Smart.
we're still, I didn't know any of that when I had mine, but
Of
we're
course
learning
not.
so much every day.
Of course not, but common sense will tell you.
Yeah.
And common sense somehow is overlooked because you are scientists. We are clinicians that are basing what we're doing on the science that you're giving us. And so we kind of go against our gut.
Yes,
No,
nice.
don't-
Good
no,
one.
No pun intended. But it's the truth. Don't go against your gut.
That's
Listen
right.
to your gut.
I see with microbiome science, the science is finally catching up with what everyone kind of intuitively knows.
Of course.
Yeah.
And we saw it in the clinical practice. We've been seeing it for 25 years. And it's called magic. But it's not magic.
Yes.
It's Pendulum.
Thank you.
So this is your first A4M conference. You're exhibiting at Longevity Fest 2023, which happens to be the largest of any conference we've had. There are more than 6,000 people here. You have huge expo hall. You saw how many people there are. It's amazing. And it's just so reassuring for people like us who've been here for a while. What do you feel? What do you think about it? What does it make you think about?
Well, yeah, it is my first A4M conference, and I was told, well, this is the conference you have to go to. Like, if you only have budget to go to one conference, this is the one to go to. And so, I sort of said, okay, fine, we'll come to this conference. And I have to say, it has been a whirlwind. I mean, even just walking up and down the exhibitor hall, I couldn't believe how many different really cool, next generation things are out there, and how many people have really taken kind of interesting science and then immediately turned it into all these products. And so it's been really, really cool to see, and I really enjoyed my talk. People had awesome questions afterwards. It's clearly an educated crowd that is eager to learn. And so, I'll be back next year.
I can't wait. I'll be there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.